Okay, you're working with a family in West Virginia. Profoundly deaf son. IEP clearly states he needs an ASL interpreter at all times. He has been without an interpreter at all for many days. Zero communication. There are interpreters who are willing, and parents have sent this information to the school. For whatever reason, the school will not reach out to the ACE agencies, and this child has no communication. They have everything well documented, are ready to go all the way with this and to make them pay so that this will never happen to another child. This is the same school that just paid out for another case of abuse. They have obviously not learned. I didn't see a message option. Do you practice in West Virginia? The parents are having a hard time finding a special education civil rights attorney in their area. Okay, I know there's not a message option and ask a special ed attorney. This is the message option. So we don't practice in West Virginia currently. Well, I mean, we don't currently, but at the same time, with this particular situation, you know, I'm going to give you the raw answer. All right. And the raw answer is not something a lot of parents want to hear. The raw answer, with regards to how this law is malleable and flexible. And because, you know, I get it, guys, I get it. All right. I take these cases all the time. I eat, breathe, and sleep this stuff. But my job is to sit there and sort of rip the Band-Aid off about how government applies this and how the government interprets it. And when I talk about the government, I'm talking about the judges, I'm talking about hearing officers, I'm talking about the State Department of Education, I'm talking about all of them. And, you know, it is intentionally designed as a flexible law, but I'm telling you that the government gives itself a lot of allowances, which we call defenses in the law, meaning that excuses. This is a reason why X, Y, and Z. And then what it does is it puts the burden on the family to have to prove that damage occurred, okay? Violating the IEP in and of itself, you know, you'd have to sit there and show this is how it has damaged the child. That's the next step, and it's not as easy as it sounds. And so, you know, does the IEP say, I'm going to take, you know, I'm going to read it for what it is, that the IEP says that the child needs an ASL interpreter at all times. Okay. But the child's been without an interpreter for many days, zero communication. Now, let's concentrate on that. So the IEP says it needs an ASL interpreter at all times. Been without one for many days. Okay, let's just take that. Now, many days, if you sit there and you take it from an equal access type of analysis, then at that point you can sit there and point to many special education classrooms where they're supposed to have a teacher, and a teacher is the only one that can teach toward IEP goals. That's how it's supposed to run. And let's say that they lost their special education teacher in a self-contained special ed class, and they've been using substitutes that have no training, have no degree, have no qualifications. I've been in situations to where they've had aides with no substitute, just aides, the regular aides that are in there, just sort of, you know, maintaining the class. And they've been doing this for months, if not almost the entire school year. And sometimes the parents don't even know because they've been given no access, and the school didn't sit there and bother to tell the parents that no teacher existed. I've also had other situations, very common, to where all students, whether they have an IEP or not, are without teachers, which technically is sort of a violation of state law, to where the children are supposed to be educated, and even federal rules like Every Student Succeeds Act, to where you have a high qualified teacher instructing the students on the curriculum, the mandated curriculum. And, you know, they're without a teacher, let's say in math, a core class, all students, to where, you know, they didn't have anybody in there for, let's say, 4 or 5 months, maybe the entire school year. So you sit there and you take this and break it down, and you sit there and you go, well, was there educational damage? Was the child damaged due to X, Y, and Z? And that's the analysis that we put into this. This is because one of the things that we have to show with regards to a denial of a free, appropriate public education is how this damage has occurred. Because we have to show where the child regressed, where the child didn't make tangible, measurable progress. All of these things are the burden on the parent. And if we can't show that, then I can tell you that with regards to the excuses that the government permits itself as to why it didn't, well, we couldn't find anybody. We tried to find somebody. I think it's compelling evidence if you have people available that could step in and the school refused to even make contact. I think that's compelling. But at the same time, being able to lay out that you provided these available professionals that were ASL competent, and the school failed to contact them, that's only one step. The second step is you would have to show where being without an ASL interpreter damaged damaged the child to where the child could not make, or where the child was damaged educationally, where they did not make progress. And so that's where you go back and you sit there and you say, well, any school is going to sit there and argue that we have teachers that are missing long-term absences. They can't fill positions, because of the pandemic, because of this, because of this. See, those become very compelling argument to people that work within the government. They sit there and they go, oh, well, that makes total sense. They are held to a different standard than you and I, guys. And there's nothing I can do about that. That's the reality of government. But I'm telling you that is how you win or lose cases, is that, I think that a lot of parents and a lot of advocates will go into these things going, the IEP says at all times, therefore the child was without their ASL interpreter for 5 days or 14 days. And I can tell you that in a situation like that, it's highly likely that the parent would lose that case if they went to due process, even though the IEP said at all times. That's if it went all the way to due process. Do I think that you could probably negotiate something out with the school system to avoid due process? Likely. But at the same time, it would be in the form of compensatory services. But at the same time, compensatory services or remedial services are attached to damage or attached to where the child failed to make gains because of the absence of the interpreter, or because of, you would have to be able to show that. Just missing those services in and of themselves is not necessarily a justification. And I know that that's crazy. You sit there and you go, well, that doesn't make any sense. But it does in the legal world, okay, to where a judge can't sit there and say, well, the IEP says that they were supposed to have 5 speech language sessions and they only got 3, so therefore you get 2 additional. They have to make up for that. It's not that simple. You have to tie it over to damage, and that takes time. So for example, if the ASL interpreter was not there for, let's say, 2 semesters, 3 semesters, or let's say 2 9-week periods, and you're going into the third 9 weeks, you still don't have an ASL interpreter. At that point, that is, in my viewpoint and my analysis, would be sufficient for me to be able to make an argument that X, Y, and Z wasn't done. And as a result, this is the corresponding damage. Or they had time, they knew the IEP says this. This is now outside of the realm of acceptable defenses or any kind of acceptable excuse. We have provided them these names. These people were available. I would subpoena these people. I would have them write affidavits that they were available, that they have not received a call from the school. And at that point, I think that you would have a better chance of being victorious with regards to recovery and with regards to them not repeating this. Now, I hear parents say that all the time. We want to sit there and make sure that this doesn't happen to other students. That's all it takes is a different administrator repeating the same stupid mistake to have it happen again. These things repeat themselves on a cycle. All right. I would love to sit there and tell all of you that my cases don't create the same stupid mistake by the same administrators time after time after time, just a different school, just a different time, just a different school year. It happens all the time. The mistakes are repeated. Why? Because we're dealing with human beings and we tend to be dealing with the same type of issues. For example, for ASL, actually for blind and deaf students, those would be considered low occurring or low incident disabilities. And there are just a funneling of available resources for them that aren't like, let's say, dyslexia or even autism services, which expand out to where you have a much greater pool to choose from. So when you have a low incident disability, I'm telling you that there's even more latitude given to their excuses. So it's good that the parents went out and said, these people are competent. They're available. If you have that in writing and they didn't act upon it, then you see. But the big thing is the time. How much time has the child been within an ASL interpreter? That's the big one. How much time? And the more the time, the more the damage. Now, you sit there and you go, as a parent, who the hell would agree to that? Who would want their child to be damaged? Nobody wants their child to be damaged, guys. I get that. At the same time, I'm telling you how the law works, and the law is not emotional. And the law works on quantifiable damage. What damage was done, not strictly by a procedural violation of it says this and they did not do it. Because there's going to be excusable error thrown into the mix as to why they did not have somebody, why it takes them time to get things approved by the board. We just can't hire people off the street. It has to go through this process. I have heard these excuses over and over and over again. Do I think they're excuses? Yes. But is it an excusable error in the eyes of the court? And that is a different analysis. As much as I have good arguments, so do schools. And so as an attorney, I am trained to sit there and be the devil's advocate. I see what they're going to argue so that I understand how I need to navigate around that. Documentation, it's key in this situation. And like I said, I think it's great that you guys have found alternatives, provided that information to the school, and the school didn't do anything about it. I can tell you that being that we're at the end of the school year, that is probably the main reason the school hasn't contacted anybody, is they're just trying to get to the end of the school year and just put you guys off. Now, has that caused damage? Could it be a civil rights violation? I think that that's more of a compelling argument, not necessarily one attached to a denial of FAPE. But I think it very well could be a good civil rights argument, meaning that it was a denial of equal access, which is different, okay? Because, see, you're taking away the child's voice and the child's ability to interact and socialize and X, Y, and Z is attached to that voice, which is attached to the ASL interpreter. That doesn't speak to a denial of a free, appropriate public education. That speaks more to a denial of equal access. And so what would I recommend there? Well, that's what the Office of Civil Rights is for. So you would need to sit there and Google search what office in their regional offices for OCR all over the country. You would just need to find out what the regional office is that serves West Virginia, and then you would need to file a complaint, and they have a complaint form if you go to Office of Civil Rights, and I would encourage the parents to file the complaint form. At that point, the Office of Civil Rights assigns their attorneys, a federal government employee that has nothing to do but concentrate on civil rights violations. And I think that this would be a good one. And then what they do is they open an investigation with the school. The school has to sit there and respond. And then they can also give you corrective action, similar to what a special education attorney can do. And at that point, believe me, it's a big pain in the ass to deal with the Office of Civil Rights if you're a school system. They hate doing that. And so I think that that might be a more productive use of time and energy. I would just go the extra step to have, let's say, a sworn affidavit, meaning it just needs to be signed by a notary, just a statement from these ASL interpreters that you found that are available. And I would just include those, one or two, with your complaint, saying that these people were available, and then provide whatever email or documentation where you informed and provided these names to the school and they didn't do anything about it. Okay? At that point, that really helps OCR do their job with regards to the investigation side. But there's your solutions. And like I said, my job here is to give you the raw skinny of how this stuff works in the real world. Okay? I'm not saying you're not right. I think you are right. Should schools do that? Should they do what the IEP says? Yes. But when you come to fisticuffs, guys, and you're out there, you know, having to argue these things in an actual court setting, or it takes on a different kind of analysis, okay? And it all is attached to damage. And being able to prove that the child was damaged because of the loss of the ASL interpreter. But like I said, a denial of FAPE, which is what would be required to be argued at a due process, is different than, let's say, what OCR does, where they investigate violations to civil rights, and that would be the proper avenue.